From Hollywood, it's Paranormal Tonight. I'm Mark Summers, and now, here's your host, Dan Harary.
Dan Harary, that's me. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are live tonight, live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. I am Dan Harary. I was away for a few weeks, back east for my mother's 90th birthday party / family reunion. My brothers and our kids and cousins and people we hadn't seen. I saw cousins of mine I hadn't seen since my bar mitzvah, man. So it was really lovely. That's why the last few shows have been repeats. But tonight we are live. We have an incredibly special, wonderful guest tonight. A friend of mine. I worked with him in the past, and this guy's just an icon and a legend. So I'm just going to bring him right in instead of horsing around up front. Legendary movie and TV star Robert Englund, best known as Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, is widely regarded as one of the horror film genre's most iconic actors. And Race, let's see slide number 1. There he is. There he is. Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. Look at that, man. After originating the Freddy character in the first Nightmare film in 1984, Robert reprised that role in 7 additional Nightmare sequels, as well as in the horror anthology TV series Freddy's Nightmares. I worked as Robert's publicist during 87-88 when he directed the horror film 976 Evil. And then I worked with him again in 1990 when Robert hosted the first edition of the Horror Hall of Fame TV special. And Sam Kinison was one of the guests for that night. Tonight, I mostly want to talk with Robert, his legendary character Willie, the Resistance alien fighter from the TV series V, which this year is the 40th anniversary of V, The Final Battle. And because I'm so into aliens and UFOs, I want to talk to Robert Englund about aliens and UFOs. Robert has received multiple accolades and honors during his renowned career, including the Saturn Award, a Fangoria Chainsaw Award, and next year, I just was told right before we went on, a year from now, he's going to get a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which is certainly well-deserved. Before I bring him on, I want to show him a couple pictures that might blow his mind. Grace, let's do slide number 2, please. All right, so this is a picture that I took of Robert Englund and Howard Stern. This is in 1987, and I was working with Robert then. We were promoting his film 976 Evil. I booked Robert on the Howard Stern show. In those days, Howard Stern and his whole crew used to come to Hollywood once or twice a year from New York to do live broadcasts from the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel. That's where this picture was taken. And this photo at the left is Gary Baba Booey, and at the right in the back there is Jackie the Joke Man Martling. So this shows you how long ago this was. But this is Robert Englund and Howard Stern. Now, I went to college with Howard Stern. He was 2 years ahead of me. And when I was with Robert this day, right here, when I took this picture, I spoke to Howard and we talked about Boston University. That's the only time I ever met Howard Stern. Let's look at the next one, Race. This is me and Robert. Right after that, Baba Booey took that photo of me and Robert. Look how young we were. I had hair then. That's how long ago that was. After that photo, Robert took me to a wonderful, famous restaurant in Hollywood called Musso Frank Grill. It was the first time I'd ever been there. It was fall of 87. I have been in love with that restaurant ever since. And for the last 6 years, I've been the publicist for Musso Frank Restaurant. It's a really great, wonderful client that I've had, and it's actually kind of life-changing for me because they've been my biggest client. And they supported me all through COVID. So thank God for Robert Englund and thank God for Musso and Frank's. All right, let's bring in the one and only Robert Englund. There he is. Robert, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. All that Musso Frank talk made me hungry. I'm craving flannel cakes now.
You know, they brought them back. They just
I heard, yeah. And what? Oh gosh, I love the half avocado cocktail with vinaigrette and the skirt steak. That's sort of my go-to.
Oh, I love all those things.
To keep my girlish figure intact.
So listen, I can never, honestly, I mean this, I could never thank you enough because you brought me to Musso and Frank's, and I walked in, Robert, and my eyes were like, oh my God, where has this place been my whole life? And I've been going there ever since. And anniversaries, parties, clients, dates, when my parents were in town. I mean, and now I've been their publicist for 6 years. I did all their PR for their 100th anniversary. And then, I have to tell you something. This is funny. I know you were on KTLA the other night, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so 1 month ago, I produced an event at Musso and Frank and with KTLA to honor the late Sam Rubin.
Oh, Sam made junkets easy.
Right. Now, my daughter, this is true. My daughter drew this little Sam Rubin icon by hand, and this icon was all over Musso and Frank's that night. This was the official icon. We gave it to the family and to KTLA. This my daughter's original now hangs in the Sam Rubin green room at KTLA. So
it looks like a Hirschfeld kind of.
Exactly, doesn't it?
Like it's something that you'd see in Sardi's on the wall.
Exactly. My daughter took the initiative. She did this, and I'm super proud. If anybody needs a graphic artist, let me know. Okay, that's enough of that. All right, Robert. So I didn't know this. You were born in Glendale, California. So you're a child of Hollywood, really.
Yeah, right up there on that right on that border of Glendale and Los Feliz. The Tam O'Shanter,
yes,
the famous old Scottish restaurant is up there.
Yes.
And there used to be a great, I don't know if it's still there, candy store, not C's, but it was called Alan Wirtz. And they had these mint sticks that I was addicted to. My parents would always go there and buy a bunch for the relatives, for stocking stuffers for the holidays.
I think there was a club or a bar called Michael's.
Yeah, and there's also that famous little pitch and putt golf course, where all the hipsters, used to go. Kind of in that, in that Vince Vaughn moment of time in Hollywood.
Absolutely, Robert. I don't know if you know this. My very first job in Hollywood in January '82 was at the American Film Institute, right up West in Los Feliz. That was my first job. All right, so tell us just a little bit about your childhood and your parents, and what were some of your interests when you were a little kid?
Well, although I was born in Glendale, I literally just spent a moment there at the hospital, and then my family moved to Encino, and we were just up behind the old Encino Theater, which is no longer there, but that's where they held all the major studio previews back then. And so, I would go out to dinner with my parents as a child, and it would be Gene Tierney and Stuart Granger, and James Mason and whoever had a screening there, which was really exciting for me. And they had the matinees on the weekend for kids, so I think I saw like opening matinee day of Forbidden Planet in VistaVision, with that great soundtrack.
Wow. Was Robbie the Robot? Was he there?
Robbie the Robot is actually in the room behind me. And my toy. I have a
wait, hold on.
One.
Did you buy him from Fred Barton?
No, my wife found it for me on the internet.
Fred Barton is the robot man, and he has the license to create and sell.
Well, I saved the box, which is extraordinary. They tell you to save the box.
Okay.
But I'm Robert. I was Robbie until I was 13, until my three sons came on, and I became Bob. But I was Robbie in my childhood, Robbie Englund. And Robbie the Robot. And between Robbie the Robot and how cool he was, and the monster from the Id, and Walter Pidgeon doing, his Shakespearean character in that from The Tempest. Earl Holliman, who I loved, the character actor, Earl Holliman, was so wonderful in that. Where's the Cook? All over the galley floor, or whatever that very similar line. But the monster of the Id and Anne Francis and, sent my hormones, whirling.
A few years ago, we did a 50th anniversary reunion of the cast and Robbie the Robot at the Egyptian Theater, Robert, and I met Anne Francis, and I'll tell you, for like 100 years old, man, she still looked pretty good to me.
Well, Leslie Nielsen was in that too.
Yeah, sure he was. Yeah. Before his comedic airplane stuff.
She's the Anne Francis is the equivalent of Miranda in Shakespeare's The Tempest, and Walter Pidgeon is the equivalent of Prospero, and the crash landing spacecraft, of course, are the sailors that are sort of left abandoned on that planet. That's where the plot comes from.
So you started, I have this down, tell me if this is right. You started acting at 12, is that right?
Yeah, I went along to this is way back now, when only the cowboy actors lived up there, and it was all thoroughbred ranchers. But my family then was up in Northridge. Okay. And we'd heard my mother's best friend had a daughter who was the most beautiful girl in the San Fernando Valley. And she was a wannabe actress, and she was 14. And to keep her out of trouble, because she was so beautiful, they asked if I would tag along and become part of this experience at this sort of paraprofessional children's theater.
Okay.
And I went along. I tagged along because she was so beautiful and cool and older than me,
Mm.
And I thought I was going to be walking around with a flashlight as an usher, or sweeping the stage, or painting scenery. But they asked me to go to the auditions. I looked like a pint-sized Danny Kaye then, with a little bit of Harpo Marx thrown in. Anyway, I got all the leading roles. I was Pinocchio. I did, a Hansel and Gretel. I just got all the starring roles. And overnight, my life changed. I lost my virginity to older girls. I had power for the first time in my life that I never even knew about, that no one had ever taught me about, that you achieve, when you get the lead in the lead in the play, especially when everybody around you wants that.
Yeah.
And I just sort of fell into it. It's something natural. And I had a kind of a good physical sense of character then. But my very first role in that company, I was Doc in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And we actually went with Evelyn Rudy from, who did Eloise and the famous book about the girl that lives in the Plaza Hotel. We went when she had a special night. Can't remember whether it was charity or what, but we'd actually toured the show to the Hollywood Bowl and had to kind of come down out of the hills, singing the song that the Seven Dwarfs sing. But I had makeup all over me, and it was very, very elemental and primitive back then. It was latex on top of tinfoil and cotton. And then that was glued to you, and it just amazing. And I had lots of padding because I had a big sort of belly,
How old were you when you were Doc? About how old were you then?
12. Just 12. Just 13. Literally had turned 13.
And you already lost your virginity by that point?
No, I lost my virginity that summer. Yeah.
Oh, you lucky bastard.
I was the star of all the plays, and you dance slow with a girl, and
there it is.
And they wanted a part, and then I couldn't get them apart, but they thought I could, I guess.
Wow. So you invented the casting couch at the age of 12.
What's so strange is that I probably didn't have that experience again until high school. I don't think I got past first base till high school again, but it was just this thing. It's that thing about, show business, and it is different. And everybody was older. I was like the kid, I remember going to a party, and the girls were floating around on those floating rafts in the pool. Sure. No parents, there was the line back then. The parents are in Tahoe for the weekend, man. Party at my house. And they were, and instead of rock and roll, it was the score to Gypsy and the score to the OG West Side Story playing. And the girls outnumbered the boys about 5-6 to 1. Wow. And they were all beautiful. And there were girls there that became movie actresses, famous movie actresses. And the couple of them had they wanted to get that even out their tan line. And they had the back of their bathing suit tops unhooked, and they were laying, face down on these rafts in the pool.
And you're going nuts. And
with little cocktails with umbrellas in them. You know, and I'd only been to like the sort of athletes parties before. You know, I was an athlete in school. I was a champion swimmer, and I'd only been to the jock parties, you know, where it's 10 guys to every one girl, and the guys are drinking beer out of a keg, you know, and punching each other in the arm.
It's so funny.
We did
how did your parents? Clearly, your parents must have recognized you had this innate talent at a young age. Did they encourage you along the way?
I think they loved theater and they loved film. I mean, I attended many premieres with them, Anatomy of a Murder and oh my God, one of my favorites, Disney's, I think it was that won the Oscar for best special effects, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with Kirk Douglas. My mother loved James Mason. And so I was always going to premieres and stuff with them, and they loved theater. But I think it was just, they got a babysitter for me, you know, a chaperone for me. And the responsibility of being my chaperone was supposed to slow my beautiful friend, this girl that I had grown up with that was older than I was.
Right.
You know, her energy to chaperone me was sort of supposed to take her out of the limelight and gaze of all the young male actors there. Because a lot of the boys had cars. I obviously didn't. But that thing happened to me, which I learned very early on. I started hanging out with the older guys because they all had wheels, you know. And that was very important in those days. You know, you had to have a car, and if not, you had to have a friend with a car, and that just made you cooler by proximity. You know.
So really, from 12, you've been studying. You've been acting straight through.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah,
right?
I exhausted every class in middle school, and then I exhausted every class in high school, plus play production, plus doing the plays, plus I became a TA, a teacher's assistant, you know, in my senior year. I was actually helping the drama teacher, you know, and I got credit for that, which was kind of nice. And then in college, same thing. My grades really suffered when I went to college because I was in everything. You know, I did every directing scene and every play, you know, and then we had our own theater in the summer. So I really neglected my academic life.
Do you have siblings?
No, I'm an only child, but I had I had this gorgeous older stepsister come live with me from about the age of 13 on in the bedroom next to mine, you know, and she was phenomenal. She would take me she taught swimming at Beverly Hills High School. Okay. And I would go with her in a convertible 53 Chevy, canary yellow, ragtop with the top down. And we would go to Beverly Hills High School. I got to push the button that opened the floor to the swimming pool from.
I've been there. I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that.
And then she'd teach a class, and then we'd close up, and then I would jump in the car, and then we would go to Dolores's on the corner of La Cienega and Wilshire Boulevard, and the car hops would skate up, and we'd get those great Dolores burgers with the barbecue sauce on them, you know, and the skinny curly Q French fries. You know,
that's great. Well, I'm 68. You're older than me. Would you say you're a child of the 50s or a child of the 60s?
Well, I was a little kid in the 50s. I was a teenager in the 60s.
Okay.
I was in my 20s in the 70s, 30s, you know, in the 80s. So that's how my life times out.
Well, you know, if you had to pick a golden era of your life, as far as the most fun you had in an era, for me, it would have been probably the 60s, because I was a drummer. I was a drummer from.
Oh, you had a band.
I had bands from when I was 12, 19. When the Monkees came on, Robert, the Monkees came on TV.
Yeah.
I was
Rafelson.
I was 10, and I saw the Monkees. I'm 10 now. At the time, I was a classical pianist for 3 years, and I saw the Monkees. Show number 1. I stand up. I go to my parents. I don't play piano anymore. I'm a drummer now because I fell in love with Mickey Dolenz.
Oh.
So I've been a drummer. You see my electronic drums behind me. I've been playing since 66.
I see the kit over your shoulder.
Yeah, that's my electronic drums. So the Monkees were 66. In 86, I worked at Columbia Pictures Television in Burbank, and Mickey Dolenz was a director of the Mike Hammer Show. And Mickey and I used to have lunch together. And I'm like, I'm having lunch with my childhood hero from when I was 10. It just meant the world to me, you know.
Well, I used to run into Mickey a lot, and his daughter,
Amy,
lovely. And also, when I lived in Laurel Canyon, it was up by the Monkey House there, you know.
So you lived did you live up there during the classic era?
No, I was down in actually I was down in another home, and one of the tenants was the great African American actor James Edwards. And he was one of the tenants there. No, this is later on. I bought my house in '86 in the Canyon. They were gone by then, but Three Dog Night were my neighbors.
Oh yeah, I just read what's his name's book, Chuck Negron. What have you ever read his life story?
Well, I know he was the cousin of Taylor Negron, who a wonderful, wonderful, funny man who we've lost now.
Passed away. Were you friendly with Taylor?
Taylor, yeah. Taylor and I lived up by Yamashura in that canyon for a while.
Oh, sure. Wow.
Yeah. But Taylor knew my ex very well. And I've seen Taylor just kill it at the old Comedy Store in Westwood and on Sunset.
I used to see Jerry Seinfeld and Leno and Gilbert Gottfried and Arsenio Hall. I saw all of those guys before they were famous. And
I remember Jay Leno working a Little Blue, which is quite different from the Jay Leno we all think of. You know?
I never saw that. Saw that. But I met him in '80 at the Improv. We were peeing together in the men's room, and then in '87, then I became his publicist for 2 years when he got the Tonight Show. So,
well, I think he was still riding a motorcycle in '80. I think he still had the motorcycle. I remember him roaring up to the Improv on that motorcycle.
And he used to drive. I don't know if he does now, but he used to ride without a helmet. And when I was his publicist, he used to get angry mail from people. Hey, Jay, we love you, man. You got to put on a helmet. Put on a helmet. So I think he started to do that at some time. We have like 2 minutes. You want to talk about Freddy Krueger for just 2 minutes?
Well, I know I'm here because of my sci-fi creds.
I want to do the V. I really want to do
really
V.
Good science fiction creds, but no, we don't have to talk about Freddy.
I mean, just have one question.
Except to say, for all of my fans that were introduced to Nightmare on Elm Street 1 on video, on an old beat up video that wasn't rewound right, that you rented from a mom and pop video store or passed around a dormitory somewhere in New Jersey with cigarette burns on it. Listen, there's a new ultra high def 4K out. Wow. And I think it's going to be scrumptious. I really encourage you to see it at least once, properly ratioed.
It'll be available for streaming, I would imagine, right? Streaming?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Do you know what network will be streaming it?
Well, I know that it's from Warner Brothers, but I'm not sure who's going to be streaming.
Probably be Max, HBO Max, or just Max. Yeah. But
I recently had to entertain my wife's family, my in-laws, and I didn't know what to do. It was a Sunday, and I fed them pizza and root beer floats, and I downloaded Hitchcock's Rear Window, and I accidentally, or I'm very grateful that I did this, I downloaded the 4K, and you can literally see Jimmy Stewart's bloodshot eyes. You can see the color of the purse of the woman that's been killed across the way, while Perry Mason.
I love that. I love that movie. I love that.
While he hides her things. It's just incredible.
Can you see more clearly into the windows across the way?
It's unbelievable. Yes, I mean you can see the lipstick on the girls in the back of the building. On the sets. It's just extraordinary.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, Grace Kelly is luminous. She almost pops out of the screen.
She was incredibly beautiful. Yeah. I mean, Robert, I'm a big UFO ET guy. You don't know this. Last year, I created the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. I'm the chairman and creator of this thing. And I've been meaning to invite you in. Half of our it's a networking group. Half of our members are UFO and ET researchers and experiencers and disclosure advocates. I'm friends with the top UFO researchers in the world, literally in the world. And the other half, Robert, are Hollywood writers, producers, directors, and performers. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about V. We're in the 40th anniversary year, essentially, of V. You play Willie, this alien resistance fighter.
A good alien, Dan.
And a good alien.
Yeah.
And, everyone knows you, of course, from Freddy Krueger, and that's your when you walk down the street. But
V is, in fact, to show that finally put my name to my face, which is so important for an actor. Yeah.
Right,
and made me international.
Right. So Race is going to go through some of the slides I pulled. And Robert, tell me about Willie and V and what it was like to make it and your reaction to it now.
Well, I believe, cast as comedy relief, but instead of talking in that plain way, Ken Johnson, the great Ken Johnson, who I'm sure you're a fan of, when I was sort of lost at the audition, he said 2 words, Robert, and he said Gene Wilder. So I sort of channeled a kind of hesitant delivery without actually mimicking a Gene. And that was sort of my key to finding him, because I figured my character was always translating from alien to Arabic, to which is where I was supposed to have been dropped off by the mothership, from alien to Arabic to English. So I had a problem with malaprops, which, of course, as you know, is a famous old trope in the theater and in movies. The character that misunderstands words.
Norm Crosby. Remember Norm Crosby?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's just so many. What's the famous one is in the Oscar Wilde play, and I think her name was Mrs. Malaprop. Yeah.
Really? Okay.
And that's Willie. Looks like my entrance scene. Over the shoulders of Jason Bernard, wonderful actor. He did a great stage production of Martin Luther King. But yeah, I think this is my first day down in Long Beach at the giant electrical plant down there. And I've got my arms full of stuff and I'm trying to translate that I'm lost, but I keep saying I am just. I've got the words mixed up in my alien brain.
Now that I'm looking at these pictures, Robert, I'm seeing Gene Wilder, kind of, Yeah, I mean, look, that's kind of like
here's the story. This is a card, a trading card.
Yeah, that's cool.
I have to sign sometimes at Comic-Cons. But this is me. Now, I was doing both shows. I was doing Nightmare on Elm Street, and I ran over to do a photo thing for V. And this is V later on. And I had just taken off the Freddy makeup, so my face is raw. This was I think a photo from my very first TV Guide session for V, and this would have been for the series. And I remember driving over the hill and taking this picture, and they slapped this on me I'd made the mistake of tearing the makeup off, which was a big no-no.
Did you have? I'm sure you've had special skin regimens over the years with all the makeup on your face, man.
Well, I used to go to this gal in Beverly Hills, but she's not there any longer. But I try to take care of it. I complain a lot, and of course, I did a really long makeup in Stephen King's The Mangler, and I also did a kind of a Hammer film version of Phantom of the Opera, with the story reset from the Paris Opera to the opera in London, which would be the same time as, of course, Jack the Ripper. We wanted to take advantage of that kind of look. Here I am with Mark Singer and Faye Grant.
Right.
Yeah. Oh gosh,
he was awfully pretty.
I believe I think this is the series.
Yeah,
I think so. But it might. See, we're on that set is a great John Dykstra, thing. We had great production designers. It made us very expensive, though. We were the show that changed the quality of special effects on American television. Before that, you had some actress in green grease paint chasing William Shatner around.
Yeah, I remember very clearly, and you and I spoke about this on the phone the other day. V is coming. V, like these big giant red V's all over Los Angeles.
Like graffiti.
Yeah. V. And I would be driving my car, Robert, and I'm like, V, what the? I had like chills. Like, what the hell is that? What is this V?
They had that great idea of letting the V, part of it dripped like graffiti paint, like spray paint had dripped.
Yeah.
You see the bottom there, yeah. But when it first was used, it was just the V. You didn't see the spacecraft.
Nothing else. Yeah, and we were
then they said, for a long time, the visitors are coming, or they're coming. That's all they said.
Robert, I think it was V, just V for a while. Then the next, I think, was V is coming.
Yeah, they also, I remember also seeing that campaign for Rosemary's Baby, where they just stenciled on sidewalks in major cities all over America, "Pray for Rosemary's Baby," nothing else. Of course, some people knew what that meant because it was a best-selling book.
Yeah.
But still, it was just a strange, wonderful campaign. And then later on, there were just billboards and stencils of the baby carriage.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember. That's scary as hell, man. I think the campaign was scarier than the actual movie.
Oh, this is my girlfriend, Diane.
Right.
Diane Savita, who played Harmony. She's wonderful.
Are you in touch with any of these people still?
Well, Diane and I did a movie a couple of years ago, and she's married to James Perriott, who, among other great accomplishments, I think Grey's Anatomy. But yeah, Diane's great. I think they spend part of the time in Hawaii. I'm hoping to like maybe look them up if I'm over there in the winter, because I think they're right near that fabulous bonsai pipeline.
Interesting. Okay. Did you like being an alien versus being a monster?
Well, I love being on V, and I started getting a huge amount of fan mail when it went to series. They kind of, and a lot of it was from women, in particular, older women, who I think wanted to mother little Willie, take care of little Willie. So they were trying to figure out a way to work that in the plot. I kept getting these girlfriends, that were trying to kind of protect me on the show. But yeah, no, I loved it. I mean, I remember one night, Dan, being on the back lot and shooting, and we were all standing around. The resistance was all standing around, and we had those trash barrels with fires in them. We were warming our hands, and someone was roasting a potato, like someone in the depression, someone in the depression. And I realized that's what the look for the whole show have been. The whole show probably should have been shot at night, because there's that old saying, horror doesn't happen in the daytime, horror only happens at night. And even though it was science fiction, I think the fact that you would go out on location during the daytime, it took away a little bit of the jeopardy of the occupation of Earth by these people. And of course, the metaphor being the occupation of Europe by the Nazis.
Right.
But we all stood around that night, and we were, a couple of shows into the series. And I remember thinking, this is what the show should look like now. We should be cold, and we should be wearing ratty sweaters, and we shouldn't be pretending to act normal with the aliens, because we're resisting them. I love the idea of maybe shooting it at night. And I don't know if that was cost prohibitive or not.
Are you allowed on your projects? Certainly you are now, but in the early days, are you allowed to give your input and your feedback to the director?
No, they were already arguing, because it went from Ken Johnson and 10 hours of miniseries,
right,
to the television series,
right.
And it was a big cast, and you got to get contractually, you have to get certain amount of people in there, and they were going to kill off some people. I think they had made those decisions. Had the show continued, and I believe I'm pretty close to being right about this. This is for the V fans out there. I think what was supposed to happen was the beautiful Star Child was going to go over to the dark side. And of course, as Willie, I was sort of her chaperone, and I had a crush on her, at Jennifer. And I believe she was going to go over to the dark side. And I think that the blonde alien was going to come over to the resistance side. They were going to be kind of a switch there. And that was one of the plot developments that was going to happen that I thought that was really interesting, because Jennifer Cook, who played the Star Child, just a really wonderful actress. And I think they could have, she'd been so kind of Judy Garland in Oz up until then,
right?
And they dressed her kind of like a little girl with pigtails and things. I think it'd been really fun to see her just, vamp, with Jane Badler and be evil and competitive, perhaps, in the lizard, in the lizard hierarchy, they could play against each other. There was also a bit of a subplot about some of the aliens, myself included, that we were perhaps a kind of alien Christian, and that some of us that had been drafted into doing this intergalactic voyage, that we were against the fact that they were there, in fact, to make humans a food source, like the old Twilight Zone,
Yeah. To
how to serve man,
to
sunny side up.
Yeah. Don't get on the ship. It's a
again
cookbook.
with Jason Bernard, and that's another special effect makeup. Those are split grapes on my face, and they're held there by they dripped warm paraffin, which up until then I had only used on my surfboard. But those are supposed to look like blisters because it was freezing in there. And of course, being an alien, it didn't bother me. But Jason's almost dead. But look how effective that is. That's just paraffin and grapes cut in half.
That's great. You've worked with, I'm sure, all the top special effects makap people there.
Oh my God. Yeah. I think this might have been a Westmore. I can't remember. I know I worked with some Westmores. Very cool. That, great famous makeup family, but obviously Kevin Yeager and David Miller and KNB, who now have Oscars and went on to do Walking Dead and a bunch of stuff. And
did you ever work with Stan Winston or?
I worked with Stan Winston on Dead and Buried. Yeah.
Okay, and then I forget his name now. The werewolves, all the werewolves. Rick Baker.
Yeah, I never worked with Rick. I think
Robert, something happened, brother. Robert, you're froze.
I'm here. I don't know what I can do. Nancy, can you unfreeze me?
Are you coming back? You're coming back.
I'm coming back.
You're a little blurry, but so am I. So, Nancy, where's Nancy when you need her?
Nancy, according to Dan, I'm frozen.
You're frozen.
But what should I do to reboot?
I don't know.
Nancy,
I haven't touched anything.
Okay, no, you're good now. You're good now. Came back.
Good? Okay,
came back.
I
think Nancy, you had the magic touch apparently.
Fully restored.
Fully restored. Okay, let's talk about
what Dan Harary got for me.
Let's talk about our Sid Caesar. So when I was working with Robert, when he did 976 Evil, I was also representing Sid Caesar. And one day I was at Robert's house. Robert, I was at your house, and I mentioned Sid Caesar, just FYI. You go, Dan, Sid Caesar. You grab me, Robert. You're like, you got to get me Sid Caesar's autograph.
And I never ask for stuff like that. This is one of my prized possessions, and arguably, and I love Lenny Bruce. I love Eddie Murphy. I love Richard, but this is possibly the funniest man ever in comedy.
I think that's great. So, Robert, you grabbed me. This is in your home, and you said, "Hold on, Dan," and you ran into the other room. You came back with that TV guide, and you go, "Dan, promise me, you will get me Sid Caesar's autograph." I go, "Robert, I promise." And then
I found that TV guide in a shop on Melrose for like $3.
Oh my God, a collector's item. Yeah. Wow. Listen, he was not a pleasant guy. I hung out with him for 2 years. I was at his house many times. He had a room, Robert. Every award, every magazine cover, every trophy you could ever think of in your life is on the shelves of his house, right? Yeah. Now, at the time, he was probably mid to late 70s. He was such a crab. And I'd be in his little study with him at his home and his wife, Florence. And in the middle, out of nowhere, Florence, where the hell's my lunch? And this little old lady with a tray, hunched, beaten, like a dog that'd been kicked, shaking. I didn't want tuna fish. I wanted salmon. I told you. And he's cursing and screaming. And I'm looking at my shoes going, poor Florence, man. I felt so bad for her.
Well, yeah, he had a legendary temper. I mean, isn't it? There's a story that I don't know whether it was Mel Brooks or I think it was Mel Brooks, but Dick Cavett was in the room at one point, and Woody Allen, and I think he held Mel Brooks out a window in New York.
It was in Chicago. Sid Caesar, I think, had done a live show. Mel came to say hi at his hotel room, and for whatever reason, Sid was really pissed. He grabbed Mel Brooks by the ankles and put him out the window, eight or 10 stories high, out the window. Just thought it was funny and held him upside down.
God, yeah, I heard it, but I mean, also a genius. The This Is Your Life segment from your show of shows.
Funniest thing ever.
I can't watch it without wetting my pants. It's that good.
It's one of the funny. I'll tell you the other thing, Robert, that I love equally. When Jackie Gleason and Art Carney do the kitchen helpful handy kitchen tool.
Oh yeah.
And Norton goes, "Can it core apple?" And Gleason goes, "Hummin'." And he hurts himself with his finger, and then he falls against the flat on the set. It was a mistake. He actually fell.
I love the PBS women too. with the dirty innuendos on SNL.
Oh yeah,
two of them
yeah.
there. Yeah, that used to get me too. Great
That's so
sketch.
funny, so funny.
Wes Craven, who created Scream and the Scream franchise and the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, and directed movies with Meryl Streep and classic dark horror like The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left. He was with me on location up in Canada, and we saw that sketch with Dana Carvey, Head Wound Harry.
Yeah.
And Wes laughed until he wept and practically fell off my couch.
That's so funny. Race, can I see slide number 11, please? We can finish up V. All right, so Robert, is that you in there?
No, now let me tell you, this is an actor. They did this makeup, but on my back, on my torso, in a sequence where they were using Willie, as an experiment to find out what the aliens might be allergic to on Earth. Okay. So that they could use it against the aliens. I was sort of a lizard guinea pig, but it was the old school Warner Brothers makeup department still. A lot of guys walking around in white coats like Volkswagen mechanics, or like you were in a hospital.
Wow.
And it was very cold, and they covered my skin with a very similar prosthetic as you see on this actor. But it was just, thank God, it was just my back.
Interesting. Race number 12 also. Okay.
That's the same actor, I think. Yeah.
Same actor. Okay.
But I know that I think Kane Hodder, who plays Jason in many of the Friday the 13th movies.
Right.
I think Kane had to do this getup once too on V.
Oh, yeah. Really? Okay, so that's not so. That is so on
not
V.
Me. I did that. You can see the thickness of it and everything. I had that glued from the top of my neck all the way down to my tailbone and all the way to my elbows.
Wow.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound comfortable at all, man.
And I was like on a cold coroner's stainless steel slab. It was like, come on, guys. This is why I digressed here. Dan, because I think in the room, one of the guys might have been Rick Baker. Now, okay. Rick was pretty well established by then. I don't know if he would have been jobbing in as a young guy over with the Warner Brothers effects departments, but there was a guy with very long hair that sort of pampered me, a young guy with very long hair that sort of pampered me. So this would have been 82, could have been.
Well, Rick Baker made his name with American Werewolf in London, which it might have been 82 actually, or 83.
Yeah, so I doubt he would have still been on staff there. It was probably somebody who's really famous. Hey, if you're watching, call me.
Robert, have you ever worked with Todd Masters and Masters FX? Do you know that company?
I know of them, and I like their stuff, but I don't think so. Now they might have done part and parcel of certain sequences, because when I do certain sequences in the Nightmare on Elm Street, there's a lot of elements, and other effects guys come in to do things. The Chest of Souls, for instance, it's animatronic and various things like that. They get different guys. Back then, not all of the makeup effects guys had all of those things covered.
Tom Masters is one of my best friends for 30 years. I've been his publicist for 30 years. So
what's some of his stuff? Because I'm trying to think if
6 Feet Under, True Blood, several Star Trek movies.
I know. That's what. Yeah, he's like obviously a younger generation than me. Yeah.
He's like a younger generation. Rick Baker, Stan Winston.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, I have to ask you this. Have you ever had a paranormal experience, or have you ever seen a UFO?
Okay, I'm going to tell you two. So little Robbie Englund.
Okay.
I'm probably 8 or 9 years old. And this is when I lived in Encino, just south of the boulevard there. And my father's a really good friend of our family, across the street, our neighbors. The woman was a script doctor at MGM. And the husband was, I think he was a bird colonel in the Marine Air Force, I'm going to say. But he now is doing Sikorsky helicopters, I think. And as an interim job, he and a buddy of his had got an old PBY that land on the water, planes that, that can land on the water. And they had cherried it out, and they were using it for businessmen to go back and forth to Catalina.
Okay.
And sometimes you have to take off and go around the backside of Catalina, get your altitude and come back to Old
Right.
LA International
Okay.
or Long Beach, wherever they were going with the businessmen. And bam, bam, bam. It's like 2:30, 3 in the morning. There's this banging at our suburban home in Encino.
Okay.
And my father gets out of bed. He doesn't know what's going on. He's, in his underwear. And it's Bill from across the street. And he comes in and they talk all night. And I didn't eavesdrop, but it came to pass that I overheard my mother and father talking about it. And Bill and his co-pilot had seen something very, very strange. And so close that Bill had used with my father the word, they looked like rivets. The phrase, looked like rivets. He was asking.
You're freezing up again, man. We lost you there. Welcome to live podcasting, ladies and gentlemen. Robert?
Nancy.
Robert?
We're still connected, Dan. He should be
Am I
kind of.
back?
Yeah, you're back
Okay,
now.
there you're back. Yeah, that's
Am I
the
back?
second. You know what, Robert? Maybe the aliens don't want you talking to me about the aliens. That could be.
Nancy. Nancy.
Nancy, where the hell's Nancy when you need her? I have so many more questions for Robert Englund, man, and I only have a few more minutes. This is so frustrating. Next week on my show, Erin Carafel, a very beautiful Hollywood actress, good friend of mine. She has a ghost story she's never told anyone ever in her life, and I'm hoping that I get to lure it out of her. She promised me. She's been in movies with Matthew McConaughey and Jennifer Garner.
We good?
And Chris Pine. There we go. All right, you're back. All right, Robert.
Hi.
So you heard a conversation.
Dan, I can't hear you.
Oh,
Really?
hang on.
Wait.
Wait. Maybe.
Hello.
Hmm.
Hello.
I don't know where mute is. Having issues. Mute.
Dan, speak.
I'm here. Hi.
Where's my?
Oh man.
Dan, I hear you.
You hear me?
Yeah, I heard you writing.
Oh, I was going to write. I can hear you. Just
No,
talk.
I can hear. Listen, let me just finish.
Go ahead.
Anyway,
Go.
Anyway, so our neighbor has this experience with an unidentified flying object,
Okay.
and his co-pilot, and he's asking my father over a martini at 3 a.m. if he should report it. Now,
Okay.
my father is in the Skunk Works at Lockheed.
Wow. Okay.
And my father says to him, no, Bill, you keep this to yourself because it will hurt my father knew enough from working at and from clearances and things and working at the Skunk Works that it would screw his pension. And so he never mentioned it again.
Did they describe the craft, Robert? Did they describe
All he said was it got very close, very fast, and they saw something in the superstructure of it that looked like rivets. They didn't see a cockpit. They didn't call it a disc. They didn't call it cigar shaped, but it came at them very fast and flat. And they saw like a rivet or a seam with rivets in the superstructure. That's as much as I heard as a child. And this was never talked about.
Okay.
Because my father had cautioned Bill. And shortly after that,
Yeah.
he went down to move down to Balboa Island in Newport Beach, and walked the dog on the beach. And his son, who had asthma, became a champion Hobie Cat sailor. and got better, and the asthma went away. But he just left wherever he was and went down there and decided to lead a quiet life.
All right, so two things. There's a great deal of research from all over the world, major UFO researchers, that there is an underwater UFO base near Catalina Island. I don't know if you knew that.
No, never.
It's absolutely true. There have been sightings at Catalina Island, Robert, for hundreds of years, and they've found anomalies under the sea near Catalina that they can't explain under the ocean. Number one. Number two, do you know who Ben Rich was? Ben Rich?
No.
He was the head of Skunk Works for many, many years.
Oh.
In the early 80s, Ben Rich is quoted as saying, We've long had the technology to take ET home.
Oh.
So, and then you don't know this, but my father worked on reverse engineering of UFO technology for the Army. My father invented drones for the Army. I have proof of this. After he died, I didn't know until after my father died who he was.
Well, I'm the same way. My father didn't tell me anything until I was in my late 30s.
Well, my dad never said a word. I found out after he died. And same thing, Robert, exactly. My dad was not going to jeopardize his pension. No chance. Yeah. Those guys, that era of people, it was pension.
Zip. My father had, nothing. But every once in a while he would disappear to Sunnyvale or to Marietta, Georgia. And I know he worked on the U2 project.
Wow.
Spy plane. Yeah, but that's all I know. That's all I know. And towards the end, after I was successful, I would take him out to a great jazz bar where the Tonight Show Orchestra used to hang out after taping the Johnny Carson show.
Okay.
And we would listen to Doc Severinsen and Tommy and those guys jam, because that show's over at like 6 o'clock at night.
Yeah. They tape at 4, I think at 4. Yeah.
So we would go see it, and hang out with him. And so a little bit of this after a couple of martinis came out. But by now he'd been retired. He retired at 52.
Wow.
Full pension as a guy in the Engineers and Scientists Guild. And 2 years later, they made my father an offer he couldn't refuse. And my father was already living up at the beach, in Hollywood by the sea, up where Gable and Lombard had their love nest. And he was up there with my mother, and they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. It broke my mother's heart, but my dad got a new Porsche every year.
Wow. That's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Listen, we sort of have to wrap up. My dad.
This was fun, Dan. I got to tell you. Yeah.
Yeah, this was great. I would love to do part 2. And I only did like 3 of my 25 questions. Would you do a part 2 next year with me, maybe?
Yeah, let's let's wait for the holidays to end, because I'm kind of up to here with stuff to do.
Sure.
And and I can talk a little bit about my star in Hollywood Boulevard. But you have such, even though you're younger than me, I love talking to people that have a frame of reference. If I say Warren Oates to somebody, or Strother Martin, or
Leslie Nielsen, or
flannel cakes,
and Francis flannel cakes, yeah, absolutely. Listen, if you and Nancy need to get to Musso and Frank anytime for dinner, just tell me. Okay. I can do that, and then we'll talk about your star soon. I'd love to have you back, maybe in the spring or early summer.
I'd love to come back in the spring. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, brother. This was so much fun. Great to see you. Take care of my Sid Caesar for me.
Go play your drums, Dan.
I'm going to go play my drums. Bye. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Robert. Thanks, everybody, for watching live from Hollywood. It's Paranormal Tonight. Next week, we have a very lovely actress named Erin Carafel, good friend of mine. She works with Matthew McConaughey and Jennifer Garner and Chris Pine and lots of fun stars. She has great stories. Thank you to Robert Englund and his lovely wife, Nancy. Sorry about some of the glitches. That's what happens when you broadcast live. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next week on Live from Hollywood. It is Paranormal Tonight. Thank you, everybody.